Welcome to the tutorial on Spearman correlation in SAS. The first thing you want to do is move the data set that we're going to use for this tutorial called test scores from my folder into yours. You can also move this code, Spearman correlation tutorial, to your class.dat folder, double click on it, and then use it to follow along with the tutorial. The next thing you want to do is run a libname statement. And then we can get into the research question for this tutorial, which is there a correlation between income and level of education? Looking at our codebook, we can see that the income variable is the total income last year measured in dollars per year, so it's a scale variable, and the variable name is income. And the education variable, which is named level_of_education, is a ranked variable measured in 3 categories, 1, 2, 3, so that means it is an ordinal variable. So let's double click on our data set and just take a look at the variables and make sure that they look how they should look. And we can also see the total number of observations. So that's the total rows. There are 20 observations in the data set. And income and education look just like they're supposed to. So now we can close out of the data set. We can expand our programming window. And we can start by computing some descriptive statistics. So for our scale variable income, we can use proc univariate specifying a normality test. And then for our categorical variable level of education, we can use proc freq and specify a bar chart to be output. So go ahead and highlight those and click run. And now you'll see the descriptive table for income. Here, the 20 observations, we can see skewness and kurtosis. We can also look at this test for normality, which shows that the p-value for the Shapiro-Wilk test is not significant, which means our variable is normal. And then we can see the histogram for distribution. Next, we can scroll down and look at how our level of education variable is distributed in these 3 categories and visually look at it in a bar chart. Now we'll move on to step number 3, which is choosing a correlation test based on the information that was provided to us by looking at the data set and computing descriptive statistics. So when we look at our correlation test table, we can see that anytime we have an ordinal variable, which we do, level of education is ordinal, we should conduct a Spearman correlation test. Now we can state the null and alternative hypotheses and set the significance level. So again, the null hypothesis is no significant correlation, and the alternative hypothesis is that there is a significant correlation between the variables. We'll set our alpha at 0.05. Now we'll move on to step number 5, which is to create a graphic to test for a monotonic relationship between the variables. Because we have an ordinal variable, we will choose to create a box plot. And unfortunately, like the Pearson correlation test, we can't automatically generate this graphic when we conduct the test. So we'll use the SAS drop-down menus in order to create our box plot. So we'll go to Tasks and Utilities, then we'll go to Graph, and then we'll go to Box Plot. Make sure you have the right data selected here. You may have to look through your data sets, but it should be class.dat.income.edu. And the analysis variable is going to be the scale variable. If we, in a Spearman correlation test, ever have a scale variable, that will be the analysis variable. And then the category will be our categorical variable. So add those and then click run. And now we should see our box plot with income here on the y-axis and level of education on the x-axis. The purpose of us creating this box plot is so that we can look for a monotonic relationship, because that is one of the assumptions that the Spearman correlation test makes. And here it looks like if we drew a line from median to median, it would only go in one direction. So yes, we have a monotonic relationship. So you can close the box plot menu, you don't need to save anything, and come back to your code, and we will now conduct the Spearman correlation test. The Spearman test is specified just like the Pearson test, except in the first line, we write Spearman at the end. But then we can include our variables. The order doesn't matter. Highlight and click run. And now we can view our output table. And we can see again, this is a symmetric matrix with the same numbers in each box. And on top is the correlation coefficient, 0.59674, and below that is the p-value for the correlation coefficient. So the p-value is 0.0055. Now we can interpret these results. Since we do have a significant p-value, we can interpret the Spearman's R. If we didn't have a significant p-value, we would just say there is no significant correlation between these two variables, and then add our R and p-value at the end of that sentence. But since we have a significant p-value, we can assess the direction and the strength. So it's above 1, so it's positive, and it looks to be a moderate correlation. And then our final interpretation would be that there is a moderate positive correlation between income and education. We could also say that as education level increases, income level increases. And then at the end of the sentence, we would include our Spearman's R and our p-value. In summary, we conducted a Spearman correlation test, and that is because we had one ordinal variable. And it was significant, so we were able to interpret those results. And that brings us to the end of this tutorial. Bye, everybody.